Okay, so we're going to be talking about the importance of photosynthesis, which we kind of did a little bit yesterday, but we're also going to talk about factors that are going to affect the rate, which you guys just listed, so we should be able to breeze right through this. Okay, so let's see if we can come up with some ideas. Why do you think photosynthesis is important? Just in general. Yeah, provides us with oxygen. Okay? If we didn't have producers or plants, we'd kind of be in a lot of trouble. There wouldn't be a lot of available oxygen. There wouldn't be any available oxygen. So they allow us to be able to live as well. Okay, what else? Why are plants important? They give us oxygen, food. They're the base of the food chain, okay? And I know we haven't done ecology yet. We'll do that later in the semester. But basically, we'll look at pyramids. And at the bottom of the pyramid, the base of the pyramid is going to be plants. Because as long as there's enough plants, then there can be enough animals that eat plants. And then animals that eat other animals. So it kind of goes up from there. So they're the base of the food chain. Anything else we can think of?
Provides food for the plant.
For the...
Like, it provides glucose.
Oh, so it is able to make its own food. Anything else? Okay, turns light energy into chemical energy. So it's able to convert that sunlight into what Savannah said, glucose, which is a form of energy. And I know we haven't gotten to ecology yet, but when we're talking about what gas do plants take in? Carbon dioxide. How does that help in the environment? Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Remove CO2 from the atmosphere. So we'll talk about this when we get to ecology, but basically when there's a lot of CO2 in the air, that can it could cause, like, we'll talk about global warming and how temperatures can fluctuate and increase, but the more CO2 that's emitted in the air can be a cause for that problem. So plants, the more plants we have, the more CO2 they take in. So when we go to build new malls or build apartment complexes, when we take all those trees down and we do, that's called deforestation, when we're doing that, we're actually, the plants aren't able to take in those CO2. So the more plants that we cut down, then it's causing a problem to climate change and global warming. And we'll get into a whole discussion about that later on in the semester. You guys able to get those down? Okay, the equation again, remember on the left side, those are going to be our reactants. That's what we start with. And then on the right side, that's going to be our products, what we end with. All right, what factors affect photosynthesis? Number one, and we already talked about this, water. Water is a reactant. So notice all the factors that affect photosynthesis are going to be our reactants. So the more water we have, the higher the rate of photosynthesis, up until a point. I'll show you what that means here in a second. Water in the vacuoles of plant cells, and it prevents from wilting. So remember the vacuoles that store water, and is a very large vacuole in the plant cells? So the water we have in there helps prevent the plant from wilting. So if we have a shortage of water, it's going to cause the vacuole to kind of shrink up, and it'll cause the plants to wilt. Number two. Do you guys get all this? Yesterday we talked about light. Remember the pigment inside of the chloroplast is called chlorophyll, and that's what absorbs the light. So remember yesterday it absorbed blue, red, and violet the most. Why didn't it absorb green and yellow? What did it do with those? Yeah, it was reflecting. That's why we see plants as green and yellow. Okay? So the chlorophyll is going to absorb those colors the most. And the same thing, just like water, the more sunlight we have, the higher the rate of photosynthesis, up until a point. up until a point. Okay, then we have carbon dioxide. Now, usually there's always plenty of carbon dioxide available. Whenever we're going to be in shortage, it's mostly an example like a closed place, like an aquarium. So anybody have like a fish tank or kind of like a large aquarium at home? A few people. So that's when you may have a shortage of CO2 within that environment. Most of the time, we're not going to run out of CO2 because there's a lot of us on Earth and a lot of animals that can provide CO2 through respiration. So in a closed factory, that's really only going to be the problem. Now, same thing like water and sunlight. The more CO2 we have, the higher the rate of photosynthesis, again, up until a point. Okay, so I know there's not a lot of room here, but somewhere around 1, 2, and 3 on the side, like the right-hand side, I would like you to draw a graph. Okay, and I'm going to show you, this is the graph for CO2, water, and sunlight. Okay, it looks like this. So somewhere on the side next to 1, 2, and 3, go ahead and just draw small little graphs, that way you can use it for homework and activities. So basically this is telling us, this is the rate of photosynthesis, so the amount of oxygen that's being produced. As we increase water, light, or carbon dioxide, it's going to increase the rate of photosynthesis. But up until a point, right, then it will kind of level off. So we can't just keep throwing more and more and more water. It'll increase, but then once it has enough, it'll start to level off with the rate of photosynthesis. So same thing, if we go down in these, it's going to decrease the rate of photosynthesis. So somewhere on the side, doesn't have to be perfect, but just draw a small little graph that shows how water, light, and carbon dioxide affect the rate of photosynthesis. Any questions about those? Pretty simple. Always go back to the equation. You know the equation, you know all the answers to what affects the rate of photosynthesis. Okay, now there's going to be one more that we haven't talked about yet, which is on there. It's going to be temperature. Temperature also affects the rate of photosynthesis. How are we doing on the graphs? Anybody still on the graph? Alright, so we've talked about enzymes. Enzymes speed up chemical reactions. So enzymes, photosynthesis is a chemical reaction. So the enzymes for photosynthesis are going to work best between 0 and 38 degrees Celsius. So since we mostly measure everything in Fahrenheit, that's about 32 to 100 degrees. It may stop if it gets above or below these temperatures. Okay, below 32 degrees Fahrenheit is considered freezing. So that's too cold of an environment for the plants. Or anything above would be considered too hot. So anything above 100 degrees. That's why we usually don't see a lot of plants in Missouri in the wintertime. Okay, some are more adapted to extreme conditions, but around Missouri, most of the plants die out in between December and February. So the graph for temperature is going to be a little bit different. So again, now this time on the side of number 4, let's draw the graph for temperature. Looks like this. Okay? So as the temperature increases from 0, so does the rate of photosynthesis, till it gets to about 38 degrees Celsius, then it drops off. So temperature's graph is a little bit different than the one for the other components. Any questions? So we started with what were the 4 reasons why photosynthesis is important. That's actually at the bottom of your notes. So I'm going to go back to the slide, the very first one, if you did not get those down. Okay. Anybody still working on this graph? All right. Okay, so if you didn't get those notes, it's down at the very bottom. Remember we talked about plants are important because they provide us oxygen. They're the base of the food chain, so if we didn't have plants in an environment, we couldn't add anything else because then you'd need herbivores, which are plant eaters, then carnivores. They're the very base of the food chain. They turn light energy into chemical energy, and it removes CO2 from the atmosphere, which helps with climate change and global warming. All right, it's pretty simple. Any questions about that? If you are finished, you can put that away and get out the cucumber project.